go.
This week, a doubleheader as we welcome back cigar citizen Steve Saka and Commonwealth Cedar Spill's Tom Pearson to Stogie Geeks. Broadcasting live from Studio C in North Carolina and powered by the G Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the Stogie Geeks Show. If you created the Aging Room small batch cigar line, the highest rated boutique cigar brands of our times, what would you do next? Well, if you're Rafael Nodal from Boutique Blend Cigars, you would combine your three most important passions of life, Cuba, music, and cigars, and create a new classic, La Boheme Cigars. La Boheme is Rafael's take on the golden age of Cuban cigars. La Boheme is a sophisticated blend of aged and hard-to-find tobaccos from the Dominican Republic. A medium-bodied cigar, rich in flavors, reminiscent of the island he left 30 years ago in a small boat with his family. Why wait for the embargo to be lifted? Smoke La Boheme today. Blending is in our DNA. And by Duran Premium Cigars, one of the fastest-growing boutique cigar companies, providing smokers a portal into the old Cuban tradition of perfect balance and the lost art of progressive flavor construction. Roberto Palio Duran began his career in tobacco over 2 decades ago in Havana, where his reputation grew within Cuban circles. The creation of Duran Premium Cigars has given Roberto a platform to introduce a series of cigars that offer the same quality, construction, and detail which he perfected while in Cuba. Brands include the ultra-premium Roberto P. Duran series, the Azan Cigar series, Nea, and Baracoa. Rollers have been carefully chosen to carry out Roberto's precise method to ensure progressive flavor in each cigar. Duran Cigars invite you to make their premium your standard. And by the Havana Cigar Club, located in Warwick, Rhode Island. It's a great place to enjoy a drink and a cigar. Stogie Geeks listeners can find a $5 off coupon on our website by clicking the HCC logo. And by M. Bombay Cigars. M. Bombay Cigars represent the most admired culture of Cuba. They select the best of the best quality tobacco to use in the aging process. M. Bombay cigars are rolled in Costa Rica by some of the most experienced cigar rollers, giving it a unique smoking experience. The band portrays the detailed and artistic nature of our small industry. Try the M. Bombay Casera, the M. Bombay Mora, and the recently released M. Bombay Habano. M. Bombay Cigars, where the cigar is a way of life. Welcome, everyone, to the Stogie Geeks Show. This is episode 146 on June 25th, 2015. I'm Will Cooper, and I'm manning the controls. Paul could not be here tonight, and I know he really wanted to be here. We have Chris and Nick up in the studios in Rhode Island, manning the controls and keeping things going. I am actually smoking a very interesting cigar. It's called a Chogui, which I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but it was sent by Chogui Cigars. And if you heard Skip Martin, who was on the show about 6 to 8 weeks ago, he had talked about his visit to the Dominican Republic, and he had smoked this Chogui cigar. It's a cigar that's only sold in the DR right now. It's a 6x43 Vitola, so it's, I'd say, that Corona Gorda range it's in, and it uses a HVA wrapper, a Criollo 98 binder, and Piloto Cabano and Criollo 98 in the filler. Very interesting cigar. Skip is right. It's something that's got a really interesting cedar taste to it right now. About a medium strength, medium bodied cigar. So I'll be talking a little about this probably as we go into our second segment. But on the lines, I'm really, really glad to welcome this person back, and he's got some inside information. We'll get to it a little bit. Mr. Steve Saka, Cigar Citizen. Steve, Will Cooper in North Carolina. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great, man. How are you guys doing?
Well, we're doing really, really good.
Hey, I got a question for you. You're in Studio C, right?
Yes.
So where are Studios A and B?
So Studio B was the old studio, which was Paul's workshop. Which was actually literally he has a workshop on his property, and that's where he used to broadcast the show before he moved into the studio, actually a real studio up in Rhode Island. And Studio A, I believe, was the show he does this internet security show, and I
Right.
believe that was the old studio he used with Studio A. So
I
I
thought you were
kind of
just making it up to make it sound like there was more. So I'm impressed that there is a Studio A and B. At least there's some reference.
Yeah, and actually, like I said, we actually have. I mean, if you ever get down to Rhode Island, the studio is really an amazing place. What the guys do up there is a second to none. Multi cameras, and there's talk we'll probably have a good chance of expanding that studio as well. So it really has become a good home for us.
Sounds great, man. Maybe
So
eventually I will get there.
awesome. So, before we kind of get into this, I heard that you have some inside information here that there is a very well-known retailer who has a secret crush on Bruce and Caitlyn Jenner and actually keeps a photo of both him and her version in his wallet. Who is that?
How could I say that out loud? I would never do that. That's Facebook tease bait. You know how that works. All that stuff is nonsense.
Oh,
Half of
and
what
we're
I
gonna.
write on Facebook is nonsense. So why
Oh,
should that be a difference?
and we're gonna get into some of that. All right, we're
Okay.
definitely gonna get into some of that. But all right, so let's kind of just get this out of the way. Last Friday, you pretty much went onto Facebook and said something serious that your 2-year retirement has come to an end.
Well,
What can you
actually,
sh-
no.
what can you,
My non-compete ended. Doesn't mean that I'm gonna work, but it means I'm now allowed to work. So that's the difference. Basically, I had a 2-year non-compete with with also a 30 days prior to the 2015 IPCPR, whichever came first. So in reality, it made my non-compete like a 23-month non-compete just because of where the show happened to fall this year.
got it? But from when I read that, it sounded like that you were ready to basically get back in the game. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I was ready to get back in the game the day I left. I mean, I just it's I don't know how to do anything else. This is what I do for a living. Is I make cigars. So for me, it was I mean, it was nice in the beginning. I gotta say, I really enjoyed kind of the first year because I just needed some time to just chill and relax a bit. But after about the first year mark, I started getting a little squirrely. Really started to seriously miss it. And so I've been kind of chomping at the bit for the last 12, 13 months or so.
It was really interesting, Steve, because when I remember I was on a plane going to Las Vegas in 2013, and the Wi if it wasn't for the Wi-Fi connection, we wouldn't have heard the news actually that it broke. And actually, I was sitting behind Stace Berkland, and
Sure, Stace, good guy.
yeah, Stace a good guy, and I was busting Stace's balls on the whole flight. Okay, and then I told him basically, "Hey, Steve Saka just announced his retirement from Drew Estate," and he just didn't believe me till I held up my laptop. So it was actually pretty interesting that so that news kind of hit as we landed. I kind of thought after that, maybe you just go into the sunset for a while, but you've kept pretty visible in the cigar industry right now.
Well, first off, I mean, go on to the first topic. I mean, it is unusual for someone that's a principal and a partner in a company to leave it when it's really doing incredibly well. And it's even more unusual for someone who chooses to leave that position to do so of their own accord. And so it was a difficult decision, but it came as a surprise to pretty much everyone, and in some weird way, including myself. I mean, I struggled for a long time with whether to do it or not because the Drew guys were great. They were willing to accommodate me in any way, take some time off, cut down on what you're doing. But the problem for me is I just can't ever do anything halfway. And the truth is, the job was it was an overwhelming job. I mean, we had a lot of people, and I couldn't find a way to throttle back. I tried. The year before I was president, and we promoted Mike Salucci to president, and I took the CEO role with the hope that that was going to allow me to become more balanced. And the truth is, it really just didn't change anything. I mean, I am who I am as who I am. So it just kind of got to the point where I really was kind of I had to make a choice, and it was a difficult choice that I made it. So it did come as a surprise to a lot of people. Um, as far as me disappearing into the sunset, I mean, you're more aware because you're an online guy and the online people. I mean, I've been doing this online stuff now for 20 plus years. so I wasn't gonna like just go away. I didn't post as frequently. I didn't interact as much for a while there, but for the most part, whether I am in the industry or out of the industry, I don't think it'll ever change my level of how much I interact with cigar smokers. It's just it's part of who I am. I actually genuinely enjoy. I enjoy the forums. I enjoy the Facebook part of it. I haven't quite gotten into the Twitter thing yet. I'm still baffled like a mother about how those damn hashtags work. I just don't get that I can make anything up and somehow people are going to find it to follow. I got to start playing with that and see how it works.
Let me repeat that for Stace Berkland. Steve Saka doesn't understand hashtags either, Stace.
It makes no sense to me.
It
I don't
makes no
understand
sense.
that.
Exactly. Stace and I have, and for listeners out there, Stace is actually a friend of mine who Steve and I both know, and he is just addicted. He is addicted to hashtags, is all I'll say. But
But
actually,
if I make a hashtag, and let's say I'm saying living good, and some guy that runs a marijuana dispensary uses the same hashtag because we can both use the same hashtag, does that mean that the people that are looking at hashtag living good are looking at me talking about my nonsense and looking at his nonsense at the same time? And everybody that I see, it just baffles me. I just don't understand it.
yeah, it's the only thing I could say is I call Twitter the world's biggest bathroom wall, and
Huh?
possibly the hashtag could be a way to filter through that world's biggest bathroom wall.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only logic I see with it. I do see just people get a little carried away with some
But
of the.
why wouldn't
I
you
think
just use, if you're going to use a hashtag, why wouldn't you just say, okay, this is going to be the hashtag I'm always going to use so people can always find what I'm talking about rather than, because I see shit now on Facebook and some guy will write something and it'll be all of like, what, maybe 50 characters long, but then there'll be like 42 million hashtags after it. So I don't get it. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I've never understood it either. You are preaching to the choir here.
Yeah, this is what I want. I want someone to tell me on Facebook or send me an email. Explain to me how these damn hashtags work so I can sort this crap out because I have no clue. I'll pay in cigars or something. I don't care. I need someone that can make sense out of this. I guess I should talk to Jose Blanco. He lives on that motherfucking thing. So
He is absolutely the king of all social media. I mean, that
it is
guy.
unreal. I mean, I swear to God, the phone is glued to his hands.
Yeah,
Thank God he can stroke like this because he's like this all the time. This is my impression of Jose Blanco. Right here. Love you, Jose.
it's funny because Phil Zengi, who I know too, and Phil's another one. He is, believe me, I can always get in touch with Phil Zengi because that phone is always next to him. He's more of a Facebook guy though, Phil. So, kind of just round off what I started here. Do you know what your next move is? Can you say, or is it something that we'll hear in time?
No. I absolutely know what my next move is. I knew what my next move was going to be pretty much the day I cashed my check from Drew Estate. Um, at this point, though, I don't really want to say anything because I want it to be right when I make that move. You know what I mean? I don't want to. It's one thing to be a little bit of a tease here and there, but this whole concept of just being a cock tease. Am I allowed to say stuff like that on the podcast? I
Or
don't even know what the rules are.
you are. We're not regular by the FCC. And by the way, teases are going to be a part of the discussion tonight. I'll just say that. I have a
Yeah,
big
so
topic of
for
that.
me, look, I've been working on a product. I've been working on a blend. I'm very excited about it, but at this point, I'm not really ready to start, dropping names and making promises and claims and this and that. And I mean, I'd be happy to talk about some other issues in regards to it that some people might find interesting. I mean, I have some internal conflicts going on, but I mean, it's like for example, you know. I mean, there's like two paths to like easy success as far as the cigar goes. If I were to make a cigar, what do you think the two paths to the easiest path to success would be?
Um,
Silence. Chris.
boy,
Come
that's a
on,
good
take a
question.
guess.
Too easy to get cheap tobacco.
Oh no, come on. Do you really think I would get cheap tobacco?
No, no,
That's what
okay,
I'm known.
okay. I'm just saying. I was saying take a
Uh,
shortcut. The two easiest paths.
All right, I can't take it. It's too painful. All
Yeah,
right,
it's gonna be painful
the
if I go.
first right, the first path, which would be the absolute easiest, would just simply be to make Liga Privada. I mean, I know the blend inside and out. It's what I'm known for. Um, Take the base Liga Privada blend, a little bit of adjustment, a little bit of tweak, and bing, bam, boom. I have a very, very good cigar. And it would also be what pretty much consumers are expecting. Because, I mean, no matter what the first product is, it's going to be judged against that product.
That's
So making
that's
something that's in that line is the very easy thing to do. The problem that I have with that is that in the end, it's just kind of lazy and dishonest and a dick thing to do, to be honest with you. I mean, Liga Privada, even though I was integral in its creation and for its production the years I was there, um, it belongs to Drew Estate. It's their property. I earned a very good salary while I was with them, and I was a partner, and I got paid for my partnership shares. So, I mean, I simply can't do that. So
but you
I
know what?
can't.
But and I'm not saying we know it's been done before by people who've made comebacks. I'm not saying everyone who's made a comeback, but you can look out there and it's not hard to see that
Of
it's
course,
it,
it's
yeah.
a very easy path. I mean, you already know that consumers like this taste profile. So basically, take that taste profile, maybe tweak it, maybe improve it a little, or maybe get really lazy. Don't do a damn thing. But it's not something that I'm willing to do for moral and ethical reasons, and so therefore, I'm not doing that. So that brings up another problem we'll get to. The second path, that's the least resistant, is to just do a blend that just blows your head off. I mean, when you make a strong blend, it hides a lot of sins, and there's a niche consumer market that really seeks out uber strong cigars, and they are typically the consumer base that gives you the most immediate love, the loudest love, because most of the people that participate online and in social media are very hardcore cigar smokers, so they almost always smoke on the heavier end of the spectrum. And when you make a really strong blend, not make a really strong bad blend, but you make a really strong good blend, you have a good shot of getting an awful lot of TLC from everybody, which also then leads to a short path to success. Um, Regretfully, I'm too stupid to take that path. It's not the direction that I'm initially going on this first blend. So, I've got, I'm a little bit concerned. I'm worried about that. No matter what I do not think can possibly live up to what the perceived hype is by other people. So I haven't been hyping anything product wise. I mean, I've been talking about cigars and cigar industry and all of this, but I haven't been talking about, wow, I got this amazing this and I got that and I'm blending this incredible blah, 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 blah. None of it. I haven't done any of that. There's just a basic expectation by people that whatever I might do is going to be incredible. The problem that you have is everybody is A, going to compare it to Liga, which I'm not doing a blend like Liga. B, I'm not doing an uber strong blend. And C, everybody's idea of what is incredible is individual. So nobody really, it's not like there's a baseline really to set by. So there's this problem that I worry about, that the expectation of individuals, no matter what I did, even if it was the greatest cigar since Kubla Khan, that it could ever live up to the expectations of consumers, which makes me think, wow, is this going to be like a guy that, there's a band that had an incredible first album, and then you're going to make the second album, and even though the second album is really good, still doesn't live up to what that first album was. So that's a real thing I got bouncing around in my head that I keep thinking about. Is this first product doomed for failure just for that reason, regardless of what it may or may not be?
Interesting. So, let's kind of take Liga Privada, two rappers you're known for, Connecticut Broadleaf and Stalker Cabana. Let's take Stalker Cabana out of this. Do you feel like if you went with Connecticut Broadleaf, which is a great tobacco, that you're immediately putting yourself in that position that, hey, now it's going to be judged against number nine? Or do
Right.
you think
But I
you
already
could take
tell
that
you,
rap? Yeah,
I'm working on a Connecticut broadleaf blend, but I'm working on a different style of blend.
that was what I was going
Um,
with. Yeah.
yeah, this particular first release will not be Connecticut broadleaf. The second release most likely will be Connecticut broadleaf, and that second release, I'm working on a blend that I want to try to recreate the cigars that I smoked, in the mid '90s that were kind of my daily. I'm not saying inexpensive, and I'm not saying just a really good, solid, honest value cigar. There was a lot of cigars back in that time, and some of them still exist now. But I always remember how many Hoy de Monterey Rothschilds I smoked, and how many El Rey de Mundo Robusto Largas, and JR Ultimate the Toros, and the Flor de Llanesas, and all of these type of cigars, that really kind of got me into the whole broadleaf thing. They weren't like Liga. Liga was the broadleaf was much more refined. These cigars were a little bit more rough, a little bit more rustic, but they were also priced in a reasonable level. You know what I mean, for the market. So that's a blend that I have a personal vested interest in trying to make, and it's something that I am working on. That all being said, that's not my first blend that I'll be releasing. That second blend is going to take some. I still have quite a bit more work to do before I'm ready with that one, I think. And then the first blend is a much more refined and balanced, and not to the level of, you know, I don't want to say that it's mild because it's not a mild cigar, but to my palate, it's more in that over medium, which for some people will make it medium full just because I'm such a cigar junkie that my octane level measurement's a little different than most consumers.
Interesting. So, when you kind of doing a couple of what ifs here, do you, and I'm not asking to disclose names or anything, but I'm kind of looking at how you're envisioning maybe releasing this. Is it something that you're looking to do be a traditional branded cigar, and I'm talking from a marketing standpoint, or is it something that you want to try to get more modern and edgy? Have you kind of thought about that yet?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, the first brand that I'm doing is beyond traditional. I'm kind of actually doing an homage to what made me fall in love with cigars in the first place. In fact, I actually went a little bit overboard, and I've already decided that I have to pretty much eat the cost of the packaging setup because there's no way to fold it into the cost of the cigar. I, uh, I've done this uh, crazy Vista and side seal, and it actually took some poor. They had to actually dig a guy out of a crypt in Germany to find someone that could actually hand engrave this thing because you couldn't even digitally engrave it. And the engraving plate alone, just for the Vista, took nearly 8 weeks of just that one guy for 8 weeks to do one plate. And today, when you do an engraving plate for a Vista, it's all done digitally. It takes the graphic guy couple 3 days at most on the graphic file. Then it gets set off to the CNC machine, and next thing you know, 15 minutes later, you got a beautiful plate. No, I actually hired a near dead German guy to spend 8 weeks hand engraving the darn thing. So, and again, I'm kind of wasting some of the money that I made from Drew Estate just because I've always wanted to make something that I could feel like you'd want to hang on your wall. And so I've gone to the total other extreme design wise. We'll see. People may love it. People may hate it. I don't know. We'll find out. But I wanted to make something that was really exceptional, and not just exceptional in appearance, but actually genuinely exceptional. So that's been my attitude with this whole first project. I've just basically I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know whether people are going to like it, people are going to hate it. So in the end, what I wanted it to be is I wanted it to be the best possible that I could do. So in the end, if it turns out to be a failure, which there's always a chance it can be, better than a 50-50 chance. I mean, cigar market's a pretty fickle market. I wanted to know in my heart that I had done everything possible, had gone to every length, whether it came to the tobacco, whether it came to the manufacturing, whether it came to the packaging, whether it came to using the dead German guy to hand sculpt the plate. I wanted to do everything possible at the very apex of what could be achieved to make it as best as it could be. And then If it dives, it dives. But at least I'll know in my heart that I did the right thing. So that's my approach.
Now, no, that's a good approach. Like I said, I think you're gonna have a lot of guys out there, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful, who are gonna love whatever you do. But I think it's gonna be that
Yeah,
other half of the market where you're gonna have that's gonna probably be the ultimate test.
yeah. Look, there is no free lunch. Um, I have an advantage over a lot of other people in the fact of well, I have advantages on a lot of levels because I have a lot of experience. But I'm just talking about solely on the initial sales perspective part of it. It's going to be very easy for me to open accounts and for me to get the cigars out there and have a chance that most guys, when they release something, they're scrapping. They're out there having to pound the pavement and work really hard and earn those accounts. And I won't have to earn those initial accounts for the most part. I'm going to be given that just on the basis of my past history. So now I'll get that advantage. But at the same time, just because you get an initial sale, it doesn't mean anything because ultimately you're going to be judged on that individual one product and people are going to decide whether they like it or they don't like it. And if they don't like it, they're not going to buy it again. And regardless of what your past is, or regardless of what your pedigree may be, or regardless of more than blah, 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 and your family came over in this boat and I did this and blah, it's irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant is whether A, consumers like it enough to buy it, and B, that they like it enough that they buy it again. And if they don't like it enough that they buy it again, then it'll be a failure, and that's just the way it's going to be. And there's not much you can do about that.
In terms of a go-to-market strategy, I look there's three this and you may come up with some others, but I'd say there's three paths. You can, as you said, pound the pavement, be a one-man show yourself, which we've seen some people do. You can actually go out of the gate and hire a sales force, or you can find someone to basically be your distribution arm. Have you thought about that, and do you have opinions on a go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, I do. Look, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. If the goal was to blow up tomorrow, you would definitely go with the path of doing your own in-house marketing team sales. I mean, you're gonna hit the ground hard, and you're going to end up getting the most amount of sales and getting the highest amount of exposure. Because even if an individual salesperson that you may have in your team is not necessarily have the same shared vision or passion or whatever you want to call it as you, they're there and you're not there. So the fact that it's like that old saying, showing up is half the job. I mean, sometimes 90%. So there's a huge advantage to doing that. The distribution way, it's nice because it makes your life easier. You basically just suck the cream off the top. You get to use other people's systems. You don't have to put nearly as big an investment in it. It's a much easier path because it's not so easy, selling cigars and handling the customers and maintaining the accounts and all the paperwork and the taxes and the TTB licensing. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not as easy as some folks think it is, particularly when you start to get into a larger scale. However, I personally, for this project and in the future, I think I'm doing the pound the pavement route. Um, I enjoy interacting with consumers. B, I don't have a need for the product to be wildly successful. I'm not cash strapped. So thank you, God. I appreciate that. And so for me, I think long term, I think the pound the pavement the route is better to actually building a long term brand. And then, eventually when the brand um, gets enough pull, then at that point you can then make the decision about whether, well, maybe I should use a distributor to fulfill all these customers, or maybe I should start looking at outside reps or inside house reps, or however you want to do it. You can go to that next step, but ultimately I'm going with the pound the pavement route. And I know that that's pretty much means that I'm going to be very preoccupied for quite a few years. But in the end, it's something that I think is the best long term.
Why do, and this is my perception, it seems like that there is a few of these distribution agreements that will Drew Estate and Hoya seems like a very good one in my perception. But more of these fail than succeed in my book. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think there's unrealistic expectations on both sides. I mean, look, nobody will ever represent your product as good as yourself, period. So even when you have a fantastic distributor, they're still in the back of your head, you're saying, I wish they did this, or they could have done that, or they missed this opportunity. So there's always that issue. And you also have the issue that, when you have a distributor, he has typically his own portfolio to sell. And you always have this concern, well, is he promoting their portfolio over my portfolio? Because I mean, we are all essentially doing the same thing. I mean, we're all selling rolled up weeds in a tube that you light on fire. So you are ultimately in any sort of distribution agreement, your partner is also your competitor in a way. And so that, that's just causes natural tension. And uh, 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 um,
You there?
I think
Yeah, we
you
think we
think
lost him.
the
We might have lost Steve first.
you think, oh, distributing analytics,
Steve, you there?
you know, so they make less. So,
Yeah, I think we lost Steve for 1 second. We will get him back on the line. We're talking to Steve Saka, Cigar Citizen. Obviously, he is making some plans for the future here. We're getting some very good insights there. Um, I'm smoking this Chogui here. Very good cigar. This is, if you can get your hands on it, it's only sold in the DR. I definitely would recommend checking it out. Really good cedary. If you like that cedar flavor from this cigar, it's definitely a cigar worth checking out as far as that goes. Um, Nice size at 6 by 43 there. Okay. We lost Steve for a second in the interview. And there was some interesting the interesting points that Steve made as far as that goes. He talked a lot about the distribution, and we've seen more of these distribution agreements fail than succeed. It you can look at the history, and a lot of these you'll hear a distribution agreement sign, and then sometimes less than 12 months that agreement will be over. But there have been some in the industry that I think have worked out real well, and I mentioned the Drew Estate and Hoya one. I look at Casada and Regis as another one that's succeeded quite well. So, you know, the idea is that Steve made the point. You can't always have, it's your product, and as far as working with your product goes, it's sometimes tough to kind of give up that control, so to speak. There. You also,
I, yeah, I
yeah.
agree. It's very difficult. Sorry, we lost connection,
No, it's
guys.
okay. I was
It,
just rambling on there.
but yeah, I mean, it's not as easy an agreement as most folks think, and it takes very reasonable people on both sides of the equation. And even when you have two reasonable parties on both sides of the equation, it still doesn't always work. And sometimes you have a distribution agreement. Like I think that Hoya had a very good long-term relationship with their previous distributor before Drew Estate, and I think that it served both parties well. But eventually, it got to a point where they felt like they needed to make a change on both sides, and ultimately, that's how Drew Estate ended up becoming the distributor of Hoya for the U.S. market. Will Drew Estate be the distributor for Hoya 10 years from now? I don't know, but it is typical that that is part and parcel of the way distribution works. Very rarely are there long-term distribution agreements. So.
Yep.
Uh,
No, it's very true.
so, but well, sorry about that. I'll flip my video back on so people can see my ugly mug. Anyhow, but yeah, I will not. I think the only way to go, at least for me, because of just how anal I am, I think I have to go the pound the pavement route. I can't see another way around it.
That's gonna, like I said, I think a lot of people are gonna be very glad to see that. Probably it's gonna be a lot on you
Uh,
though, but they'll be glad.
Well, you know what though? I enjoy interacting with consumers, particularly when it's about cigars and tobacco, and I love even having the business conversations, the marketing conversations. I love all ends of the industry. Where I really, really, truly suck is I'm just the worst salesman. I'm not the guy that's going to be the, hey, you know, buy five, I'm going to give you two free. I got you a hat. Blah, blah. I'm terrible at that. And I also, you know, I don't ever really want anyone to buy something that they're not really going to like. You know, so for me, getting someone to buy something, oh, wow, I got them to buy it. That's not a win for me. What's a win for me is getting them to actually appreciate the product, like the product, so they want to buy it, not getting them to buy it. So for me, it's gonna be a little rough. Plus two, you know, I have my moments where I'm just a total dickhead, and that doesn't always work well when you're trying to be a salesman. You know, when you're a salesman, the job is to, you know, to sell the person, and you know, I'm not necessarily the best at that. So it's gonna be very interesting. It could turn out to be a total train wreck.
I doubt that. I doubt that. All right, so let me ask another question. So, regular production plans for these cigars?
Yeah. Look, it's something I kind of find weird. Let me say this: all cigars are limited. Every one of them. Macanudo is a limited production cigar. There is only so much tobacco that is in any given year that's ready and that is used in that blend. Now, so every brand is limited. There's a top end ceiling on every single cigar if you stay true to the blend. Um, you know, now I don't. So I'm not really sure I even understand what limited means anymore. In some way, I have a hard time with that. So yes, this product that I'm working on, every product that I'm working on currently that I'm in development on, is intended to be produced continually. I am purchasing, securing, selecting tobaccos with the idea that this cigar will be produced on an ongoing basis and that hopefully the brand will do well and ultimately be successful so that it can continue to be continuously produced. Because I'm not a big believer in the small batch production method. And the reason for that is you ultimately don't get the best quality cigars in the long run. You get much better quality cigars and more consistent blends when you have the torcedores working every single day, making the same blend, and even making the very same vitola size. So for me, in order to achieve the highest quality possible product, that means that I need to have a pair making that particular blend and that particular vitola all 20 work days of every single month. Because if I don't do that, ultimately, you will not get the same consistency. I'm not saying you can't make a great small batch cigar, you can, but you will make a better regular production cigar if you treat it with the quality standards of a limited edition, but you make it a continual edition. That's my personal perspective on it. So I'm personally leaning towards doing that. And I'm not saying that somewhere down the road, I won't make some sort of sizes or something that's, you know, a particular limited release, you know, something that you do on an annual basis or you do for a special batch or something. But for the most part, my general philosophy when it comes to cigar making is that I like to build brands. I like to make something that is going to get enough customers and consumers that are going to like it so that they can continually buy it. And that was the case even with Liga Privada. I know it was always in short supply, but you know, we were every year that we made Liga, while I was there, every year we made twice as much Liga as the year before. So it was always a continuously growing production as we were able to bring more tobaccos online, get more crops commissioned and planted, get more tobacco fermented, get more tobacco aged. It was continually growing. It just happened that demand was outstripping even the growth that we were capable of doing. Um, but I don't set off with the concept of I want to make a limited edition cigar, but at the same time, The cigar is going to be limited by the amount of tobacco that's available, that's right to make the cigar. That's just simply the way it's going to be because I don't believe in, oh, wow, the brand is hot, so let's go ahead and slap something together. We'll just make a little change here, a little change there. These idiots won't notice anyways. Half of them can't even taste what they're smoking. Let's get it out there because let's strike while the iron's hot. You know what I mean? I'm not a believer in that either. I think you owe consumers, everyone works very hard for their money. And somebody they have 1,000 options when they walk into a cigar store. And they're making a conscious decision to choose your product over somebody else's product. And I think that you have almost an unwritten covenant to give them what they expect to be given. And when you have a customer who's a consistent box buyer, a consistent consumer of your product, I think it's your due diligence to give them the best that you possibly can to honor that. And so for me, yes, the product will always be limited by the tobacco available, but the goal is not for it to be a limited edition product. Does that make any sense?
That makes sense. So in other words, you're not saying I can make 500,000 cigars in a year. Is basically what
Um, I could tell you right now, I think on this, I have right now secured tobaccos for this first blend that I will have the ability to make somewhere around 325,000 of these particular, the first blend. The
but there's a
second,
cap. There's a cap.
there's
Yeah.
it's a first year cap because I have already done tobacco planning for next year, and that will allow me to grow the brand, or grow the production, assuming consumers like it. I hope they do because I've already committed to the money. But I mean, like I said, there's a limit, but it's a limit that's dictated by tobacco, not dictated by the marketing of the product.
Got it. Yeah, and I think that's an interesting way of putting that. When you're right, there's finite amounts. In the end, there's everything. There's not an infinite amount of tobacco. You're right.
No,
And
there
you're
just isn't. It doesn't matter, even for the largest brands.
Yeah.
Ultimately there is a ceiling on them. So eventually, what you hope is you get to the point where the brand, you get full market penetration, and then you can consistently make the blend in a way that pleases consumers. Well, I mean, Padron's a perfect example. Look at Padron Anniversarios. I mean, for many, many years, they were incredibly limited. Demand dramatically outstripped the ability for them to produce them. But they they planned and they programmed and they aged extra tobaccos and they fermented more tobaccos and they grew more tobaccos that were necessary to make the blend. And now, for the most part, you can pretty much get your 1964s and 1926s pretty consistently. So as a result, that blend, I mean, it was always limited, but now it's pretty much hit the point. And now where you see some of the more, the chasing thing going on is on more of the anniversary releases and the particular extra special vitolas and whatnot. But and I think that that's the life cycle of any good, consistent brand. It's going to go, and you're going to grow it, and eventually you're going to be able to adequately meet market demand, and you're going to be able to balance out your production, which is where you want to be in the end. You want a nice, even keeled, balanced production, because again, it gives you just a better quality product overall.
Yep. No, that's a good point. Marketing. So this is a question I want to pick your brain on. Um, I've been pretty vocal about this lately. Is that the cigar industry's gone to this model? The way they market their product is more and more through these teasers. And
Yeah.
what I find, and this is what I find, and I want to get your opinion on. You could be honest with me. They put a teaser out on Facebook or Twitter, and I've tried to avoid this game, and I'll tell you why. And then media outlet one will call on the teaser, and sometimes they'll spill the beans in 10 minutes after that thing's out there, and there's a whole article out there. Or what happens is multiple media people start calling, and the information now is being repeated 4 or 5 times to these different media outlets, and it's getting interpreted 4 or 5 different ways. Two questions. Do you think that teasers, why is the cigar industry doing teasers, and do you think it's an effective way to market your product?
Well, I think it does teasers because we're in a highly competitive market. I mean, it's very hard to get noticed. I mean, Every retail shelf at this point in the country is full. There is no more linear feet to be had. So essentially, you have to knock something off the shelf in order for your new product to be on the shelf. What you're hoping is you're hoping that you're going to knock somebody else's product off the shelf. But a lot of times, what ends up happening when your company gets to a certain size, someone just simply says, you know what? I'm going to dedicate so much space to Rocky's brands. I'm going to dedicate so much space to Drew's brands. I'm going to dedicate so much space to General's brands. And as you come out with new stuff, you're actually knocking your own stuff off the shelf. And what you're hoping is you're going to hope that you're going to end up knocking off the ones that are the slower sellers, don't turn as much. So, I mean, we're in an incredibly competitive market. And now with the advent of social media, it's essentially free to do teasers. I mean, 20 years ago, I mean, just to get brochures printed was a huge expense. I mean, if you had to, because of how easy it is to communicate, how much flatter the world has become, it has allowed dropped so many barriers to entry that it allows anybody to pretty much do anything. And it's not just cigar related because, I mean, as crazy as you and I are about cigars, there's a group of women that are crazy about quilting, and there's a group of people that are just absolutely fanatical about 1960 Japanese motorcycles. You know what I mean? So there's these niche groups, and it's very easy to find these groups, and it's very easy to hit them with messages and to pique interest. And so I understand why it happens. Um, I don't think it's something that's. I don't think it's necessarily something to be heralded or hated. I think it just simply is. It's a fact of the way we all communicate now, and I don't know that I can really hold it against the people because they're trying to make a living, and they are in a highly competitive market, and they want to take advantage. They want to take every advantage possible to give themselves the best opportunity. The dilemma that I see is that I don't know about you, but I'm saturated. I mean, I'm at my level with getting marketed to. I mean, you're just being marketed to so much now that for me, like 95% of it goes through my eyes and never registers on my brain anymore. I think at this point, I don't really pay attention to much of anything unless I'm genuinely interested because I know the people that are behind the product and I like things they've done in the past, or I'm genuinely curious about what their new thing is. So therefore, I will go out of my way to seek it. And the second thing is really just honest consumer and friend referrals. Bob saying to me, "Hey, Steve, I smoked this and I really liked it. It was this and that, and boom, boom, boom. I think you ought to give it a try." That to me has far more weight than anything that I could possibly read or hear. Um, and so for me, that has a far greater impact. And I think that most consumers are kind of going that way, which of course goes back into the social media thing. When you see more people on your friends list or your Twitter followers or whatever, that ends up basically almost being a direct referral in some way. But I even screen a lot of that out. I mean, look, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but my friends list is really just a bunch of cigar folks that are crazy about cigars. A lot of the people on the list I've never actually met. You know what I mean? I do my best to communicate with everybody, but at the same time, it's unrealistic to think that, yeah, I'm good, close personal friends with all X thousands of you. It's just not physically possible. So for me, even that I take with a bit of a grain of salt. And as a result, I miss some really good things. And a lot of times, stuff that other people have known about for months and months and months being really great, I found out late. But guess what? It's still there, and I can go grab it, and I can still enjoy it, and I catch up sometimes. So, but I can't hold it against people for teasing. It's a very highly competitive market. I understand it.
Good. That's a good answer. So the other thing is in terms of marketing, and you've been pretty vocal on this, is gimmicks.
Yeah, look, again, it goes back to all the noise and trying to market your product. And I don't actually, I was making fun of the gimmicks. And as a general rule of thumb, I just do make fun of them because I don't think that, I think a gimmick might get you the opportunity of getting someone to try something. But I very rarely, when you look at all the great brands over time, so few of them started on a gimmick and then became a great lifelong, real, true standing brand. Most gimmicks typically end up meaning a very short life cycle on the shelf. Now, for some people, that's good. They love those quick initial sales. Hey, I sell 2,000 boxes. I'm dancing to the bank. I think I'm doing great. Let me come up with my next gimmick and I'll sell 1,000 boxes. But then you're just in this churning of constantly having to make gimmicks. And ultimately, what will end up happening is you're going to come up with all these products and you get customers that are going to like it. But eventually, you're going to peel those customers off because they're not going to like the third thing and the fifth thing and the eighth thing you release. And then it gets to a point where even if the number 13th thing you release is fantastic, they've already tried, like, out of your 13, they only like two or three of them. And so they have bad experiences with eight or 11 of them. So you kind of get dismissed. You know what I mean? And I think that's a path for short-term success, but I think it's a absolutely horrific plan if you're hoping to be long-term successful. Um, so for me, I don't like that aspect. But my real issue is I don't like any of the gimmicks that I don't like things that discredit us as an industry. So for me, we're a very difficult time right now. There's a lot of pending legislative activity that could have a dramatic impact on the entire industry. So I think that everybody, as they're trying to come up with their next great idea, really should assume the responsibility of thinking about how is this potentially going to be perceived by those that want to shut down the handmade premium cigar business. So I take real issue, and I wrote something on your website about you giving press coverage to the Chinese finger trap cigar that Moya is coming out with. I personally, I don't think you should give coverage to that cigar. I think it's very bad for the industry. Now, you're on the media end of it, so it's your responsibility to your consumers and readers to give coverage to new products. I understand that. On my end of it, I think that packaging cigars with essentially a kid's toy in the box in every cigar is a very stupid thing to do. I don't think it has any hope in hell of being a long-term brand that's going to make this guy a millionaire. It's a short-term sales play, but yet it ends up becoming a product that anybody that's a zealot against our industry can hold up and say, look, they say they don't market to kids. Well, look at Exhibit A. Here it is. Look, it comes even with a toy in the box, for God's sakes. To me, I think that's terrible. So I will basically say I think it's a bad thing for the guy to do for the industry, and I would encourage cigar consumers not to buy such products, and I would encourage cigar retailers to not sell such products, and I would encourage guys like you to not give media coverage to such products. That's what I would do, but that's me.
Yeah, very tough thing, Steve. There's because I always kind of operate under the freedom of the press thing. And it wasn't. The interesting thing is, I guess when you said it, I kind of understood all the reasons, and there's no argument as far as the reasons. I kind of also think we've looked the other way with cigar companies who've done this. And I'm not saying you have looked the other way, but I think there's been people who've looked the other way when I see cigars put into gun boxes, with trading cards, comic strips. And I'm not judging them one way or another, but I've seen this industry look the other way with this.
Let me say this.
Okay.
I think that right now is a particular juncture in time that this is a much more sensitive issue than when some of those previous projects have been done. And I will say that I necessarily wasn't in agreement on those projects, but we're literally right now in the closing windows of this FDA legislation being published. It couldn't be a worse time possible to put a product out that could be questioned. And I'm just saying that right at this moment, this is not a very good thing to do for the industry on the whole. And I would ask that people that are brand developers and brand owners and everyone involved to just take a moment and just think about what the potential impact is of what you're doing. That's what I'm asking. I think that I'm not saying that things like this haven't been done and there's not past examples. Of course, look, I got to tell you right now, I don't think that coming out with the Acid brand today would be the best thing to do. But Acid was made in 1998. You know what I mean? It's an established brand. things change with time, and you have to be cognizant of what's currently going on. And when I see products like that, I don't think that they're being very, um, I just don't think they're being very thoughtful about the current position our industry is in.
Has I mean, has the manufacturing community? Do you think that they need, and you could certainly say the media's responsibility. I'm not even going to argue with that. That's a valid point. Has the manufacturing community maybe? Do they need to kind of sometimes look at maybe policing themselves, or are they just kind of, well, we got
Well,
to
I think
worry
they
about our own thing?
do. I mean, look, Davidoff, they were debuting a product, last year for Matt Booth. They had sent out a press release, and almost instantaneously they realized that no, this isn't going to really reflect positively given the current climate, and they yanked the product before it ever got out. You know what I mean? So I think companies do try to do this. I think you see it more. I think the mainstream companies, the larger companies, are very cognizant of this fact, and I think that they are trying to be, they definitely take this into consideration. This is most of the things that you're starting to see now are more on the people that are smaller players, newer players, less experienced players, people that really haven't had the opportunity to be involved with the lobbyists and haven't gone and spoken to congressmen and whatnot. So they're not really as informed as probably some of the other people are, and I can understand that. But I think it's very important for everyone to just simply speak up rather than just turn a blind eye to it. So I mean, to me, it doesn't matter if I, I'm just going to speak my opinion, and as a result, some people are going to think I'm a total douchebag. But I don't think that this type of marketing and this type of packaging is good for our industry. Period. I just don't. And I'm not going to really. Somebody's gonna have to really convince me what the benefit is of putting cigars in a box that looks like a Milton Bradley game box. How that's good for the business. I just can't see it.
Fair enough. Fair enough, Steve. Absolutely. We're coming up on the top of the hour, so I have 5 questions. Kind of wrap this up, unless there's anything else you wanted to add.
No, I can.
Okay. We normally do 5 funny questions. I think we did this with you last time, so I'm going to do a word association. I'm just going to name a few things, and you just tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
This is bad. This
I
is
know,
really bad.
I know, because I have one in there that you're really gonna. I can't wait to get one in. All
Uh,
right. Agrinorth or tobacco?
yeah, this is bad.
You
Can
could
be spectacular.
Davidoff.
Elegant, consistent.
Barrel aged tobacco.
What was that?
Barrel aged tobacco.
Jump the shark.
Ending the Cuban embargo.
About damn time.
Nosotros.
Those Otros. Yeah, a shame. Could have been a great project. Just you know, it was one of those things. Dion and John. They worked up a blend. They came up with a really great blend. It was very tasty. The problem was they were working with some sample bales of tobacco that Nick had bought, like, gosh, it must have been 3 years. So this particular tobacco that was an integral part of the blend had 3 years of bale aging on it, and just even though we could secure the same tobacco, we just couldn't recreate what it tastes like with 3 years of aging on it. The truth is, so the project just, Dion in the end was never satisfied with the blend, and to be honest with you, rightfully so, because it never tasted as good as that 3 year old bale aged tobacco.
Interesting, interesting. That was an interesting thought I just had to ask at the end. Steve, as always, we really appreciate the time. Thank you so much for coming back on the Stogie Geeks. We'll look forward to talking to you when as your plans progress. If you could stay on the line as we cut the segment for 1 minute, I just have one thing to ask you off the air.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, and with that, we'll take a break where we'll be back with our second guest, Tom Pearson of Commonwealth Cedar Spills.